Hi everyone, my name is Goblin and welcome to another build video for the Elder Scrolls Online. Today I'm actually looking at a PvP build. I do play a fair bit of PvP on the live server and I like to play DK. So I thought I would share the build that I've been using for no proc cyrodiil with you today. So this build is a fairly offensively focused DK. We're stacking a lot of weapon damage and penetration. And because our weapon damage is so high, we actually have some very strong healing paired with strong health recovery on our back bar to kind of keep us going and stay in the fight. Now, I am not a 1v-Xer, so this build is not uh, designed for pure solo play and to be able to take on multiple people at once. I do usually run with a couple of friends when I'm playing, so this is more of like a, small scale, or even if you get into some larger scale PvP, it does have some very good tools for sieging and things like that. All right, so I am going to get into it. First of all, we are going to be looking at our gear. So I am wearing one piece Lord Warden, heavy reinforced. I've got 5 pieces of Hundings. I've got 1 heavy chest, reinforced on that, and 4 pieces on the body. Those are medium with impen. I'm wearing 1 Spriggans on the body with a well fitted. And then I'm wearing 2 Spriggans jewelry, both infused. I've got 1 stamina reduction on that and 1 weapon damage on the other one. And then I've got 2 Spriggans maces on the front bar. I'm running 1 Nirnhoned, 1 sharpened. This is going to give us a ton of weapon damage and a ton of penetration. Using double maces, plus Spriggans, plus one of them is sharpened. And then on top of that, having breach, we actually get major and minor breach using this setup. We have a ton of penetration and a ton of weapon damage from that. And then I'm using 1 ring of endurance, infused weapon damage, and then on the back bar I have an endurance sword and shield, Nirnhoned on the sword, well fitted on the shield. And for enchantments, I'm using weapon damage on my sword, max stamina on the shield just for some more healing scaling. Actually using 1 poison glyph and 1 flame glyph on the front bar. That actually gives us a little bit more burst with a similar amount of damage over time potential as double dot poisons, although you can also use double dot poisons if you prefer. And then on my body, I'm wearing all prismatic glyphs. This is just going to give us the most overall max stats, and we do want to stack as much health as we can with the burstiness that is coming out of Cyrodiil right now. Everything is very bursty, so having 29k health on our back bar is going to be very helpful to help sustain through some of those bursty combos from a Meg Sork or a Stam Sork or a Warden, something like that. Alright, so that's going to cover it for the gear, enchantments, and everything. Now, the Lord Warden doesn't have to be heavy. If you have a medium, you can actually just wear an extra piece of Hundings with the reinforced and get impen medium Lord Warden. That is actually what I run on the live server. This was just easier to put together on the PTS. And if you do want a little bit more tankiness, you can run a another impen here if you're not good at dodge rolling things like uppercuts. Another impen is just going to help you a little bit, but I find that with the well fitted on the shoulder here and on the shield, plus with our CP, we actually have quite cheap dodge roll. You can string together 4, 5, 6 pretty easily without too much of a burden on your stamina. And that's going to be really important because right now, as I said, it's very bursty. You need to dodge roll anything that you possibly can. Like if you see a crystal frags coming at you, you see an uppercut coming at you, or a nightblade just went into stealth, you really need to try and avoid their burst rather than either blocking and trying to mitigate it or going on the offensive and trying to face tank things and put them under a lot of pressure so they stop attacking you. It's just not going to work. You need to be able to avoid as much of that damage as possible. So the extra well fitted, plus with our CP, our dodge roll is very inexpensive, and we make use of that a lot. All right, the other thing that we're going to be doing to set up our character is I am using the Serpent Mundus. This is just the most efficient way to get our recovery, and we do need it. We sit at around 1500 unbuffed, and with a potion, that goes up to almost 2000, which is going to be really important. The other thing that we're using is Artaeum Takeaway Broth. We need the recovery from this. You can go Sugar Skulls, but your recovery will sit very low, around 1400, which is playable, but a little bit uncomfortable. And again, like I said, with the amount of dodge rolling that we need to do right now, I think the extra stamina recovery is actually going to do more for you than having more health and stamina. And we have enough magicka as is. We have quite a large pool because we're running all prismatics. So that is our food and Mundus. Both sustain choices. We don't get any sustain from our armor itself, except for the fact that we are wearing 5 medium, which is just going to buff up our sustain nicely. However, if you do prefer the Sugar Skulls, go right ahead and use them. It's not a bad choice. All right, so with that, I'm going to go over the skills that I'm using. So I am using dual wield. I really don't like using uppercut right now. It's a bit slow and easier to avoid. And I just really, with the way that cyrodiil is right now, the lag is actually feeling pretty good recently. But at times, it can get a little bit bad. And when you have just a touch of lag or high ping, uppercut feels really horrible to use, and I just don't like that. So I have designed this build for dual wield, and that is what has been working for me. So on the front bar, I'm using Camouflaged Hunter. This is for mostly the major savagery. Everyone is running crit right now because in no proc you can't run a Malakath, and this is just going to help us get a lot more damage out of our crit chance, as well as we actually have a tool to de-stealth Night Blades, which are running rampant at the moment as well. So this is not a bad ability to slot just for the active use of it, as well as the passives are going to be really strong. And that Fighter's Guild passive gives us 3% more weapon damage, which we are stacking a lot of, so that adds up. I've got Venomous Claw. This is our highest damage dot. We put this on, just let it do its thing, and it'll slowly whittle people down really effectively. Rending Slashes is another dot, and a snare as well, which is good. Keeps people locked down, stops them from getting away from us, and this is kind of our pseudo-spammable slash dot. When we pair this with a heavy attack, it can actually be quite bursty, like a spammable, but when we just get it on someone, it also will bleed them over time. Whirling Blades, this is our execute. We want to save this for when people are getting quite low, like 30% or lower. And this is going to help us, just finish out kills. It's not as strong of an execute as Executioner is itself, but it can hit for a decent amount because the initial tooltip of it is higher. So it only scales 100%, but it starts with a decently high tooltip. So this can go quite high when we're buffed up. Resolving Vigor, this is just going to be our heal over time. We do want to be keeping this up when we're on our front bar, even when we're going on the offensive, because this is going to mitigate a lot of damage for us. And paired with our health recovery, this is actually very effective at keeping us topped up while we go on the offensive. So this is a really good healing skill. The tooltip goes extremely high when we're all buffed up as well. And then Take Flight, this is your bread and butter DK ultimate. This is our main burst skill. So what I like to do is when people get dotted up, I start applying a lot of pressure with those damage over times. And then if you line up a heavy attack into a Take Flight on somebody, they just get absolutely bursted down. They'll 100% be in execute range if they haven't been able to purge off those dots, or they're not super tanky. And you'll be able to finish out a lot of kills by getting people low with this, as well as closing distance on people who maybe you've dotted up and they've run away. On the back bar, so I am using Shielded Assault as my stun. You can also use Petrify here if you prefer, but I actually really like having a gap closer right now. There are a ton of Megsorks in Cyrodiil right now. They're all streaking away. This helps you keep up with them, It stops them from getting away from you for too long and actually allows you to finish out those kills. As well as this is a pretty effective stun and gives us a little bit of a damage shield, which gives us just a little bit more as we engage. And it is a weapon skill, so this will proc our backbar enchantment on our sword as well. Noxious Breath, this is going to be our major breach. The reason I have this on the back bar is A, it makes space for Camo Hunter on the front, but B, you can also combo it off of Shielded Assault really well. You dash them, they get stunned, they stay still. This is a little bit hard to hit as well, because you got to get them in the narrow part of the cone to get it on them at first. So you do that, and this skill is hard to swap bars off of because it's kind of a channel in the way that you have to hit them before you can swap. So if we just hot swap off of this, it makes it easier. We just make more efficient use of our back bar, and the swap goes off more consistently. And of course, the major breach is very much so necessary, and more damage over time is going to do really well. We're using Molten Armaments for our major brutality because we don't have rally. This is going to be our source of brutality, and it actually works really well with dual wield. Because we're not running a pierce memorable, we're going to be using heavy attacks for burst, and this buffs the damage of our heavy attacks by a full 50%, making them hit very hard. You can actually hit people for 6 or 7k with just your heavy attack, plus if you stack a rending on top of that, you can actually burst someone for almost 10k damage with a heavy attack rending combo. Hardened armor, you can also use volatile armor, but I chose to use hardened for our major resolve buff because it also gives a bit of a damage shield. Again, that tiny bit of shielding is just any little bit of mitigation, resistance, survivability that you can get in cyrodiil right now is going to help a lot. And because I'm using Camo Hunter on the front bar, I don't need to use volatile armor to de-stealth Nightblades. So I opted for the hardened version of this. It's going to give us a bit of a damage shield and our major resolve. Cauterize, again, we're not using rally, so we need a burst heal on the back bar. Cauterize is going to be really good. It keeps up while we are on the back bar, or once we cast it, so it'll actually heal us over time. As we go into a fight, we can keep this up, and we'll get a bit of passive healing. Paired with our vigor and our health recovery, we can heal ourselves passively and keep a lot of pressure on the enemies by doing that. As well as when we're fully buffed up, because this scales off of our highest defensive stats, you can actually get a very decent burst heal off of this, like 6-7k in Cyrodiil, which is not bad. The only thing you have to keep in mind with this is that it does take slightly longer to go off. It's not exactly instant. The little orb has to pop up and then get you. So you can use this as a spam heal, but it takes just a half a second to go off. So you got to be mindful of that. And then for a defensive / offensive ultimate, we've got corrosive armor on the back bar. This is what I really like to use anytime I get outnumbered. You know, I have 2 or 3 people on me, because it limits our incoming damage to 3%. This means that we won't get chunked by anything, and it gives us true damage against the enemies. Now we have a ton of pen, so the primary use of this is going to be to protect us. But if you come up against anyone who is super tanky, this will allow you to kill them as if you're wearing something like Balorg, even though we're not. So I think this is a really good ultimate right now. And it's not too expensive. 200 for true damage is not that bad. Alright, so that's going to cover it for all the skills. Yeah, essentially everything works together. The only thing that we do not have, and you can choose to slot this if you would like, you can drop Camo Hunter for a snare break. And if you were going to choose a snare break, I would recommend either Protective Plate from the Draconic Power line that will break snares and give you mitigation against projectiles, or you can use Race Against Time from the Psijic Order. Morph of Accelerate. Race Against Time will break snares and give you minor force, which increases your crit damage. You don't ever want to be casting that for the crit damage because your crit chance isn't super high, especially if you're not going to have Camo Hunter. But it will give you a little bit of offensive potential plus the ability to break snares, and that costs magicka, so it won't put your stamina under too much strain. But if you do want to do that, then I would actually recommend swapping your hardened armor to volatile so that you can decloak Nightblades in a radius around you. Okay, really quickly, I know that PvP doesn't necessarily have a set rotation, but just what I like to do, and you'll see this, I've got some gameplay for later in the video if you want to watch that as well. I like to get buffed up, and then as I target select, I go in using my shield charge, hit them with the breach, dot them up, and then once they're all dotted up, they're taking a lot of pressure. You can just wind up heavy attacks and rending slashes. If that pushes them low, hit your execute. If you need to, you can wind up a heavy attack and hit the Dragon Leap, or actually finish them off with the Dragon Leap. A Dragon Leap will do more than an execute, even on a low target person. So if you're having troubles finishing someone off, you can save that leap to actually deal the final blow to them. And no problem with doing that. And I'll just show you really quickly. Our weapon damage does go very, very high. If I hit that and then go to the front bar, we're at 6,300 completely self-buffed. If we get a continuous attack buff in Cyrodiil, that goes up to 6,700. So almost 7k weapon damage. That's going to give us a ton of healing. And we've got a decent amount of mitigation as well. I haven't really gone over the stats, but if I pop everything, and on the back bar here I show you. So we've got 2,000 base health recovery on the back bar. But if we have ultimate, we actually get that to go up very, very high to 4,200. And that comes from our CP. I'll be showing you that in just a second. Other things to note, we've got 28k spell resistance, 24 or almost 25k physical resistance, and 2,500 crit resist. So we are decently tanky, but we can still get chunked, as can anyone right now. Even no matter how tanky you are, you can still get chunked right now by crystal frags, uppercut, fissure. Things like that are really, really hitting hard right now. So you got to be conscientious of them and try to avoid those attacks as much as you can. Other thing to note, our stamina recovery is up near 2,000. We've got 29k health on the back bar, 27 on the front bar, and about 30k, 31k stamina on both as well. But with our very, very high weapon damage, as you can see, going up to, like I said, 6,300 self-buffed on the front bar, we are going to be getting a ton of healing and a ton of damage from that. And 9,700, almost 9,800 before we apply major and minor breach. Now, just if you didn't know, physical damage can proc minor breach now, which is how we can get minor breach. Maybe I'll be able to show that. Yeah, minor breach. If we hit someone with shielded assault, it has a chance to proc sundered, which will do a small amount of damage, pretty much nothing. But shielded assault, rending slashes, and actually our execute, as well as our take flight, can all proc minor breach. There's just a chance for it to happen. So our maximum penetration can go extremely high, up to a full 18k on the front bar, if we get that to proc at the right time. So that is quite a lot. That is basically anyone in light armor, you're going to be doing true damage, which is very helpful because, like I said, there's a ton of mag sorks out there right now. Okay, last thing I'm going to go over is the CP. So for the green tree, the passives don't really matter too much. I would recommend having breakfall, because if you ever jump off of a keep or something, you won't get, 70% of your health gone, which is good. And then the other things that I would really highly recommend having, Steed's Blessing at all times, increases your movement speed when you're out of combat up to 20%. This also affects your horse. And then you can get Gifted Rider as well, which affects your horse exclusively, so you can ride your horse really fast, helps you get around. As well as if you're chasing someone down and your status of being in combat has dropped out, or you see someone and you're running after them and you haven't gone into combat yet, you're going to be very fast to catch up to them. Also, rationer and liquid efficiency will just help save you so much money. You go through a lot of food and a lot of potions when you're in Cyrodiil. So this is really important to have. Warfare. So for passives, I recommend getting everything, but what I would recommend actually getting first is your quick recovery and your hardy and your elemental aegis. Everyone does so much damage right now. You're going to be hitting just fine without CP slotted. So if you're not max CP, which pretty much no one is, get your mitigation first. And then preparation is actually also good. The guards hit really hard right now. Really, really hard. So that extra 8% against the guards is going to be really nice. I've actually been killed by guards like 2 or 3 times in recent memory. And it's not fun. It feels bad. Other things to get, make sure you've got your martial status effects. That's going to help you proc your minor breach. Mighty is going to give you weapon and spell damage on your attacks. Piercing, obviously, but we do have a lot, so maybe just get 10 into this to start out. And then for our slotted CP, we're using Thaumaturge for damage. We have Duelist's Rebuff for mitigation. This is single target attacks, such as Crystal Frags, basically anything a Nightblade does, uppercuts, things like that. So make sure that you have this. It's just going to mitigate, take the edge off of some of those high-hitting single target attacks that are hitting so hard right now. And then Untamed Aggression. What's great about this is this gives us 150 weapon and spell damage on our stat sheet. So because we have Major and Minor Brutality as a DK, this gets buffed and is actually more than Wrathful Strikes once we have our Minor Brutality and Major Brutality factored into it. And this affects our healing as well. So this is going to be an overall really good option. And then the last thing, I would highly recommend slotting Resilience just for the extra crit resist. With Impen and this, we're getting around 2,500, which is still lower than last patch. But only having 1,900 without this is... It's not great. It's not great. Things can hit you really hard already, even if you have this. So I would highly recommend having it. And then make sure you fill out all your passives, your crit chance, your max stats, your healing is actually going to be really nice. And yeah, that's going to be about it for that. Red Tree, you have a lot of options. I would recommend... Red Tree is very intensive. The ones that I would really highly recommend having first is Hasty. This is going to give us 8% movement speed. I think I forgot to mention this, but I am also an Orc. So that gives me 10% base. Without any Swift Jewelry in the medium armor, I'm actually faster than I was last patch using 2 Swift in my heavy armor setup on an Orc already with the Steed. So you are going to be really fast without needing to run any Swift, which is very helpful to get around and navigate those fights. The other things that you're going to need, Hero's Vigor. We're not getting as much health from our food, so a lot of our health actually comes from our red CP. And then Tumbling, just reducing that roll dodge cost. You're going to be needing to do that a lot. And then after that, get everything you can. And the slotteds that I am opting for are actually Boundless Vitality for more health, Rejuvenation for Tri-Recovery. You need this to sustain. And we are using Tripods, so this all gets buffed up by our potion as well. Ironclad, going to give you more armor. And Strategic Reserve is going to be what's giving you such high health recovery on the back bar. If you stack 500 ult, you can actually get over 4k health recovery on the back bar, which is really, really good. Some other things to take into consideration. If you either have A, high ping, or B, trouble breaking free from things, get Slippery. Use Slippery instead of this. This will keep you alive. Every 21 seconds, you get a free break free for no cost. So what's really good about this is just, yeah, if you're having trouble reacting to things, or, you know, for example, sometimes you get hit by an in-cap, like you're not super fast on the dodge rolls, this is going to help you have a lot more wiggle room, especially if you're a newer player. And then another thing that we can take into consideration is with the amount of Mag Sorks and Stam Sorks that are running around, using double shielding to keep themselves alive. If you're really annoyed by that, we actually have 2 damage shields on this build, so we get some benefit from this, and 15% damage done against shields is going to be more potent than any of the blue CP in terms of damage when someone has a damage shield on. So if you're trying to really take out Sorks and you just hate them, go ahead and slot this. I would say if you're going to slot either one of these two, first thing you can drop is Ironclad and then maybe Strategic Reserve. But make sure you have these two at the very least. But again, CP this patch is very open-ended. Use what you're comfortable with. And by no means are you going to be, you know, short-handed because you don't use exactly the same CP as me. All right, so that should cover it for everything in the build. If you have any questions, please ask in the comments. I am happy to answer any questions you do have. And, you know, PvP is really up to your playstyle. I like to play a bit of a brawly, but still very offensive-minded style. And I play with my friends. So I don't mind running a dot build where, you know, if someone's purging my dots off, I don't really mind that too much because I play with my friends. And I've got a Meg Sork back there that can just, you know, if they're spending all their magicka to purge, and I keep the pressure on them, just keep reapplying those dots, and then they get chunked by a crystal frags, and then I leap them and execute them, then, you know, that works fine for me. If you're a solo player, this does still work. I've dueled lots of people. Just the only thing you have a real struggle with is, again, people who can cleanse themselves become infinitely harder to kill. And they don't necessarily kill me. I haven't had trouble surviving against those kinds of builds because those people are generally a little bit more tanky and don't have super high damage output, but you're definitely not going to be able to solo them very easily. And your best bet in that case is to probably just go for a corrosive armor. Try to get your dots on them if you can, and then just try to heavy attack and whirling blade them down. That's going to be your best option. All right, that's it. I do have a bit of gameplay, so if you want to see how this build performs, I did it in a battleground, which does have procs enabled, but this is actually such a good stat build that I was able to do battlegrounds against people using procs just fine. Fine survivability, able to take down really tanky targets. And I thought that was a good way to showcase the build, so please enjoy the gameplay, and if you like this video, leave a like, leave a comment telling me if you have any questions, leave a comment. Yeah, thanks everyone for watching. My name is Goblin, and have a good one.